So welcome everyone. If everybody could start to find their seats and we'll get started in just a moment. So first I want to thank everyone for coming and braving the wind tunnel down the middle of campus. It's hard to believe that people were walking around in shorts and t-shirts yesterday, at least my kids, but that's probably reflective of my parenting. So my name is Mickey Luna. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources here at St. Lucie University. And today's a significant occasion. Really, today's the culmination of the work of all of you, of so many across campus, to focus on what's really important here at St. Lucie University, our workplace culture. Today, we're introducing a new initiative called Cura, which is the Latin term for care. We intend to talk today a little bit about the program, to give you an overview of the program, how it came to be, and how it reflects our mission as a Jesuit institution. We'd like to start today's program with a brief video which speaks to how working relationships here at SLU can impact each of us.
To me, a culture of collegiality, understanding, respect, and appreciation means I'm part of a team that has a common set of goals, and regardless of position title, or organizational structure, or even department at times, we're all working together towards that common set of goals.
A community where I can be accepted and respected.
By encouraging my colleagues to do more than what is expected.
Making a workplace where everyone can be the very best person he or she can be, as flourishing a human being as he or she can be.
You appreciate what everybody does to you in a manner, and it's a big or little.
Recognizing we all have this spark, this force, this love that created us, and that's the reason we're here.
I feel respected when my ideas and dreams are acknowledged and valued.
When I am spoken to in the right tone, even when I'm corrected.
When I'm listened to, and I know that my suggestions have been implemented or at least considered.
When the part of me is recognized, that's a reflection of who and how I am.
When my directors come to me and say, you know what, we appreciate what you're doing for the students, and we appreciate what you're doing for St. Lucie University.
I can create a collegial workplace by listening first, really thinking and considering before speaking.
By trying to see the world through the eyes of the other person.
Providing a welcoming atmosphere where people are accepted and respected.
Working together, really collaboration is the word that comes to my mind.
I think everybody should respect each other.
Leading by example and treating people with respect and doing your due diligence to be a good person.
By showing a vested interest in our patients, their families, and those working shoulder to shoulder with us.
What a great video. It really reflects, I think, those things that we often forget, but are so important to all of us and with respect to our working relationships and how we work with one another. So for today's program, you're going to hear from Dr. Fred Pistello, Father Chris Collins, the Assistant to the President for Mission and Identity. I'll give a brief overview of the program, and then you'll hear from representatives from the Faculty Senate and the Staff Advisory Committee talking about the program and their commitment to it. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Fred Pistello, St. Lucie University's president.
Thank you, Mickey. I'm struggling with a cold, so my voice may go out at times. I'm sorry about that. I want to welcome you all and tell you how pleased I am to see such a large group come out for this launch. I want to thank those in Madrid who are participating via Fuse, and particularly thank those in human resources, marketing and communication, those who are part of the Cura effort, and everyone who participated in getting us launched today, bringing us to this point. Cura grows out of conversations we've been having, conversations that were part of our strategic planning effort, conversations that led us to say that Our culture, our climate is important. Some objectives from the plans that we hope Cura will address are to provide structured opportunities for all of our campus to become aware of Jesuit education principles and values, and to promote a culture of inclusion and service among all members of the SLU family based on our Catholic and Jesuit values and principles. And those go to the 5th initiative in the Maggia's strategic plan. In the spiritual exercises, St. Ignatius describes consolation and desolation as two opposing spiritual conditions. In times of consolation, we feel humble. In times of consolation, we shore up new strength. In times of desolation, we undertake prayer, we undertake penance, we strive to remain patient. Ignatius asks us to reflect upon our actions in relation to these two states of mind. And this reflection brings us clarity, helps with our discernment. I believe that this sort of discernment is what's taking place at SLU. It takes place every day, and now it's going to take place more intentionally around our culture, around our climate. I'm excited to be able to be launching this initiatives. Many of you in surveys, in conversations, in meetings have expressed a desire that we have a more open, a more participative, a more ethical culture here at SLU. And so now your colleagues are responding with this initiative. As we implement Cura and we cultivate this environment of care, we'll increasingly see each other in light of grace. Our community will grow. Our community will become more inclusive. I do think it's very important, based on what I've observed and seen here in my 19 months or so at St. Louis University. When I came to the campus, I was frankly concerned about what would this culture, what would the people of SLU feel in terms of the values of the institution. I knew that the organization had been through a rough patch, and I worried that people might be cynical about the values of SLU. I worried that people might be distant from the values of our Catholic Jesuit mission. And what I found is that's not the case at all, that people overwhelmingly are committed to those values and those ideals and want the organization to be consistent with them. But on the other hand, I've heard many stories about people not living up to those ideals, people falling short. I've heard that from the time I started. I heard it in many of the conversations that we held following the occupation in the fall of 2014. I heard it as recently as last Friday when I was talking to a member of the faculty. She's been here a few years. She'd previously served at state school, and she talked about how we do have a wonderful set of values and ideals that were part of her attraction to our institution. But she has found that there are some people within her division who do not live up to those ideals. So it's time that we come together as a university and talk about how we should behave and act toward each other, how we should value each other based on what it is we are. And what it is we are is what you all say you want us to be. Now, none of us are perfect. All of us make mistakes, but we have to strive to be better, to treat each person as we would like to be treated, to create an environment where all can flourish. This will only happen if we all commit ourselves to this effort. And I think the fact that you are here in this room today speaks to your interest in doing so. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, no, I've got it. Thank you, Dr. Pistello. Working together as a community that cares for one another is aligned with our strategic plan as well as our Jesuit mission. As an institution, our Jesuit heritage makes us unique and special. And so for that reason, we've asked Father Chris Collins, the Assistant to the President for Mission and Identity, to come speak a little bit about the connection of this new initiative to our Jesuit heritage. Father Collins.
Thanks, Vicki. Well, I'm very grateful, and to be honest, I'm very overwhelmed at the turnout here, and I think that's edifying in itself. That there are such great desires that Dr. Costello was already talking about in the culture of this place. As we know, I think it would be hard pressed to think of another university that is so mission driven. That comes up, as you know, all the time when people, even for the search that ended up bringing Dr. Costello here. Those consultants heard again and again, and even they were overwhelmed how mission-driven this place is at every level, from students to faculty to staff to alumni, administrators, and so on. So there's a palpable desire for mission, and there are also all kinds of obstacles along the way that can hinder that sort of mission. So I just want to make a brief reference to even the term that we're using for this program, Cura. There's a little debate about how to pronounce that. We're American here, so we can just say it however we want. It's a Latin term, but it has to do, there's an echo of elements of Jesuit governance and Jesuit spirituality, actually. So just a little insight, little tidbit about Jesuit life itself. For us, for individual particular Jesuits, every year we have to get together, or we get together with our provincial, and we have a manifestation of conscience, it's called. And so there's an element of trust that is required in that context. And the provincial, the way we talk about it is the provincial has responsibility for both Cura Apostolica, the work itself, as well as Cura Personalis, care of the person doing the work, every individual Jesuit. And the only way that works, the only way the mission really gets carried out, of course, is if there's also at the very same time that attention to the care of the whole person. And how does that play out? It plays out in a very sometimes tenuous way. There's no forcing that trust, right? So you got to start on a good level to begin with for the individual Jesuit to lay out there to the provincial. Here's what's going well in my life right now. Here's how my work is going well. Here's how my relationships, both within the Jesuits and outside the Jesuits, my relationships within the apostolate, the work where I am laboring. Here's where it's happening. And all both the successes as well as the failures. This is what I want to try to lay out there. And to be honest, the more I can be made vulnerable before my provincial, then he receives that with great trust and great reverence, actually, to where it is, particularly where it is that I'm struggling. So the work then can be much more successful if that individual person is being cared for. So that's really, I think, what we're talking about. There's no doubt about the desire to carry out the mission, it seems to me, at this institution. But as human beings, we always need to be paying attention more and more on all kinds of different levels, not just with respect to our superiors and so on, but our colleagues, those who we have responsibility for, and to kind of keep that element in mind, that I want to build up a situation of great trust and great reverence for the people around me. That's another little tidbit from our Jesuit spirituality in the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius. Some of you might be familiar with that. In the retreat that gets laid out there, the spiritual exercises, one of the things that Ignatius says is, when he's talking to the spiritual director before that director talks to the person making the retreat, he says, first of all, be very modest and have a light touch when you go into that retreat setting, because God is already operating within that person. There are already great desires happening within that person. And so you got to reverence that and to put the best possible interpretation on what that person is saying when it comes to the dialogue that happens within the retreat. That's a fundamental principle. I don't come in with all the answers that this person has got to shape up and work like this when it comes to their relationship with God. God is already very active and alive and well in the life of that person. So to come in with a sense of reverence, and I think when we consider our whole community, maybe a bit of a challenge for all of us to remember, there are great graces, there are great virtues, there are great desires operating in every person that I'm surrounded by here. And I've got to presume that. If I presume that, then I'm going to have a different sort of relationship. I'm going to have a different set of dialogues with the person that I'm interacting with. If I presume the best. Now, there's going to still be disagreements and so on that happen along the way. But that's kind of a game changer if I can come in with that element of reverence for the person, reverence that there's already great desires happening within this person, great virtue, and then how can we build on that? And so there's an act of trust in itself. But there are all sorts of, as human beings, we don't operate the way we're supposed to all the time. At least I don't. Here's one of the things that I think is a little bit of a tidbit or an offering, a kind of a mini spiritual exercise that I find very helpful in my own life, and I suggest it to other people as well, whether that's in retreats or spiritual direction. When I am really feeling ornery on any given day, when things are getting kind of toxic within me, I can very easily, if I check myself, if I ask myself, who am I talking to inside my little head? Every single time when I'm really feeling kind of ornery, bitter, cynical, whatever it might be, I am guaranteed talking to myself. And I'm talking to myself about, sometimes I'm talking to myself about those people out there or that one person there. And I'm running through my head all these kind of harsh judgments about another person or another group of people, for example. And that's what's leading me into a kind of a toxic, bitter state of mind in my own head. Or maybe I'm talking to myself about myself and I'm berating myself about all my failures and saying, you know, it's just a matter of time until they all figure out that I'm a fraud and I'm going to get kicked out of here and any number of different things. Nobody likes me here and my life is worth nothing. It can get pretty dark, at least in my little head. Some of these kind of monologues that go on in the human condition. I think this is just the way it works. I can have a little monologue going on that is judgments, that are judgments about other people, or it might be a monologue about myself, berating myself. And either way, my world starts to get very small and very hard and not too pleasant. And the way to break out of that, and this is like the little spiritual exercise that could happen is, and this happens just in friendship. Sometimes you have this experience where when I'm feeling really ornery and muttering to myself about all different kinds of things, when I say that out loud to a trusted friend or a loved one or a family member, you know, it's like as soon as I say it out loud in a dialogue instead of a monologue, it starts to sound kind of ridiculous, actually. It starts to sound kind of goofy. And it often ends up sounding kind of laughable. These kind of really harsh, all-encompassing, totalizing judgments that are being made. And so there's something I think that's very interesting, and it's a kind of spiritual exercise to undertake, is whatever that monologue is that's going in my head, find somebody that I trust enough to speak exactly that toxic monologue out, just as it is. If you're a Christian, I suggest this to Christians, say exactly those harsh judgments that I'm making about other people or about myself. Say that out loud to Jesus. Say that out loud to God. You say these things to Jesus, it just doesn't really sound right. Right? And you can think of some of those dark little monologues that might be going on in your head occasionally. When it's spoken out to one whom I love or one whom I trust, it like breaks the power of it. It's amazing. And there's something, I think, very fragile but very powerful about that sort of exercise. So how can we, maybe that's a question for us just as human persons, but perhaps especially as a whole community, as a SLU community, you know, especially when there have been hurts in the past. And I think this is really key. And Dr. Postella was talking about, you know, when you took office here, there's obviously a lot of some history of hurt and frustration and so on there are wounds within the community. And everybody knew that a lot of that has to be healed, right? Well, you don't just heal automatically as a community, but this is a powerful moment, I think, in our history and in our institution right now to undergo more and more of that healing and kind of speaking out some of those places where there has been hurt, where there has been a lack of trust, but to take the risk to lay some of those things out there, to lay some of those statements out there, and to know that this is now the present that I'm in, right? I'm not in the past anymore either. It doesn't mean everything just goes away, but sometimes I think when some of those hurts have happened in the past, we can just box those people in who have maybe been the source of those hurts in my own life. And I can say, well, that is the kind of person that person is and always has been and always will be. I've got them locked into a certain box that way. And I'm not giving them any opportunity to be a different kind of person, right? And I hope the other people around me will cut me the slack to allow me to be a better kind of person and not be locked into the kind of person I am on my worst day either, right? So I think there's a beautiful opportunity here. It's a challenging one, but I think a very exciting and fruitful opportunity for us as a community to step back a little bit, to pay attention to where maybe some of those hurts have been, and to allow an opportunity for some kind of healing of some of those hurts, to break out of some of those monologues that have been going on perhaps in our heads, and move those into places of dialogue and new trust, and perhaps allowing new sorts of relationships to happen, especially in those relationships that have perhaps been painful in the past, to allow something new to happen. So just a few little possibilities for some things to reflect on, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity to be with you. So thank you.
So I think Father Collins' remarks really demonstrate how a program like this can be unique, or how our Jesuit Catholic identity can make this a unique and special program here at St. Lucie University, different than what many other institutions can do. It's not focused simply on what people shouldn't do, but really trying to elevate all of us together as a workplace and as a community that works together. So I'd like to spend a little time giving a brief overview of the origin of the program and some of its special features. To start off with, I think it's important to recognize this program is really one that's been created by all of you. So the program has come together through the assistance of literally hundreds of people being engaged on this topic across campus in different ways. It started a few years back when the Staff Advisory Committee commissioned a survey on working relationships here at St. Lucie University. And through that survey, they found that there was the need to start working on improving how we work together. And I think as a great complement to how we at the university, when we're working at our best, can work together, the Staff Advisory Committee and the Faculty Senate leadership work together to try to figure out how do we do better and how do we address these issues. As they did that, their work led to that topic being a focus point in the Climate Assessment Survey of 2014. When we did the Climate Assessment Survey, there were really two things that came out of that survey. The first was that we have a lot of people here at St. Lucie University that are committed to our mission and committed to each other and having a workplace where we all are lifted up. But the second thing was that we can do better. And so as a result of that Climate Assessment Survey, focus groups were formed, a task force was formed, hundreds of people provided feedback on how do we put together a program that really achieves the best of what we can be. And so as a result of that, we're announcing this new initiative called Cura today. One thing I'd like to say quickly is thank you to all those people who were involved in those processes. Again, literally hours spent on focus groups and task forces and people coming together to figure out how do we put together a program that really achieves the best of what we can be. So let's talk a little bit about what the Cura program will consist of. It's really made up of 5 key components. The first one, standards. Standards for how we can hold ourselves accountable for being the university our mission calls us to be. The second component, recognition. We want to recognize those who are living to those standards on a daily basis. The third component, providing educational resources to our community, providing access to resources to help everyone be the best they can be and help bring out the best in the others that they work with. The fourth, support. We want to provide processes to assist people who are dealing with difficult situations to get resolution to those situations. And the fifth component, feedback. Establishing methods for monitoring the program and to ensure it accomplishes its purpose and continues to evolve based on the needs of our community. So let's talk about the standards briefly. The standards were developed and are intentionally simple. The first, treat each other with dignity, compassion, and respect. The second standard, treat all colleagues as equally important team members, regardless of job, role, or title. The third standard, appreciate and understand the culture, humanity, and differences of others. And the fourth standard, build trust through honest, open communication, reliability, and integrity. These standards are intended to be reminders of how we are called to interact with one another as members of the St. Louis University community. So many people are living these standards on a daily basis, and that's why we felt it was important as a second key component of this program to include and focus on recognition programs. As many of you are aware, we currently have the SLU Stars program, which is a nominated program offered 2 times a year where colleagues have the opportunity to nominate their colleagues for awards, recognizing those people who are consistently living out the mission and these standards on a regular basis. As part of the Cura program, we're now offering a second, more immediate peer-to-peer recognition program called SLU Sparks. SLU Sparks was inspired by the Jesuit phrase, go forth and set the world on fire. What we want to do is allow all of you to recognize those you work with on a daily basis who do something to light a spark in you. To give everyone here an opportunity to highlight those people, to put a spotlight on those people, recognize them and thank them for what they're doing to help you do better and to feel comfortable and fulfilled when you're here working at St. Louis University. And then to highlight those to others, which we will do on the Cura website. The third component, educational resources. We want to focus on providing our people the resources and the tools to help them succeed and elevate their working relationships. There will be new and upcoming educational opportunities which can be found on the Cura dedicated website, which is www.slu.edu/Cura. On that website, you'll find access to articles, videos, different materials that can help you through Skillsoft that can help you sort of deal with difficult situations or find ways to better work with your colleagues. The website will also provide you access to highlight other materials that are in events that are going on across campus, such as workshops that we'll be offering throughout the year through our Learning and Development Department on things such as conflict management, having difficult conversations, team building. We'll be offering in-services to divisions and departments for those who couldn't be here or for those who were here and want to talk about it within their groups as to how the Cura program will operate and how you can access the materials and how it can serve your departments and divisions. We'll also be integrating Cura into the newsletters and different materials that you see published on a regular basis. The fourth component is getting assistance for issues. So as we've talked about, we all falter from time to time. We're all human beings, so people are going to make mistakes. There will be times when people we work with don't live up to the standards, and there will be times where we probably don't live up to the standards ourselves. First, we want to have people have the tools and feel empowered to deal with those situations as colleagues, as professionals working together one-on-one, where those situations allow for that to happen. And so, again, the website and other resources that we offer will help give people the tools and empower them to do that. But we also recognize there will be occasions where that's just not going to work, whether it's not appropriate or a third party's assistance is needed to deal with those issues. Through the Cura program, we're offering numerous avenues to go and seek that assistance. A Cura dedicated phone number has been developed, 977-CURA, 2872. An email address where you can send an email seeking assistance at slucura.slu.edu. The Cura website will also have an avenue for you to seek assistance through that website. And you'll also always still be able to contact your human resources consultant, which many of you have done in the past if you needed assistance with an issue. So these groups, these avenues are really an avenue to let someone know that you need help trying to work out a situation maybe with a colleague or figure out how to deal with a difficult situation. In situations where it's appropriate, we've partnered with constituencies or organizations throughout campus, such as the Faculty Senate, Academic Affairs, and Staff Advisory Committee, to bring the appropriate resources together to help deal with whatever the situation might be. We have people that have gone through mediation training so they can help mediate situations where mediation is appropriate. Any request for assistance when it's received will be logged and it will be documented through resolution. So one way or the other, we are going to ensure that if somebody is seeking assistance, that we're going to track that and make sure that there is some resolution brought to the situation. The fifth component, which we've referred to as feedback, primarily relates to the creation of a steering committee, which will be responsible for oversight of the Cura program. That steering committee will be made up of faculty, staff, and administrators. Their role will be to provide feedback for ensuring that the program is achieving its purposes and that it's making a difference. They'll make sure that the university community is kept informed on how the program is working and also make recommendations on how the program can be improved as it evolves over time. Finally, that group will work to make sure that issues are being addressed and that there is accountability when we have consistent failures to meet up with the standards that have been outlined. So today's program is really only the beginning, the introduction of the Cura program. You'll see stories about Cura in those living it in Newslink, in SLU Life, and any other publications that are issued across campus. The SLU Cura website will be your primary resource for finding resources that will help you deal with the issues that we're talking about or seeking assistance. It's important to note that Cura does not replace our existing processes and procedures. Really, Cura just provides a name to a collective effort brought about by all of you to help deal with the issues here on campus and elevate our working environment to align with the mission, with our mission, and to create a working environment that befits our mission. It's an opportunity for all of us to grow through better dialogue. Now that you've heard a little bit about the Cura program, its origin, and how we intend for it to work, I'd like to introduce at this time Eric Armbrecht from the Faculty Senate Executive Committee, Sue Stevens from the Staff Advisory Committee Executive Committee, to come speak a little bit about their organization's commitment to Cura and how they see it working at St. Lucie University. So, that's a good question.
So good afternoon. My name is Eric Armbrecht. I'm the secretary on the Faculty Senate and one of the officers of the Faculty Senate. I'm thrilled to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to provide a few remarks. So on behalf of Faculty Senate President Doug Williams, I stand here in full support of the Cura program. The comments that I'll share today reflect his personal support as well as mine. And many of my remarks are directed specifically at fellow faculty members across the university. Colleagues, there's moments in our careers when we experience profound satisfaction, true inspiration, and a real sense of accomplishment. It's in these moments we should see how critical our faculty and staff colleagues are as they support our ability to achieve our personal goals. But challenges we face can also generate anxiety, fear, stress, frustration, disappointment. I mean, think about it. We have publication deadlines we're presenting before a hostile audience. This is not a hostile audience, but coping with unresponsive superiors, double or triple booked patients, dealing with grant application bureaucracy, facing a mountain of ungraded exams, and then there's expense reports. So there may be times when we might question why we ever wanted this job, to be honest. But it's those times when we could become gruff, short-tempered, uncivil, demeaning of others. Maybe it's a fellow faculty member down the hall who we've really never liked and never gave us a good reason to like, who gets on our nerves for one reason or another. Maybe they're just too arrogant. Or it's that business manager that we work with who says that he or she's tied up on something very important, but when it's not our stuff, how could it possibly be that important? So it's at these times when we have to remember what it is in our careers are all about, what we aspire to be, and the community in which we want to work. You see, it's at these times, indeed all times, that we must embrace and model the basic commitments of the Cura statement. So we must treat each other with dignity, compassion, and respect. We must treat all colleagues equally, as equal important team members, regardless of their job or title. Appreciate and understand the culture, humanity, and differences of others, and build trust through open and honest communication. That's the goal. But I believe it's important to be as clear and straightforward as possible. Colleagues, we have a problem. You see, too many times I've been informed of circumstances in which faculty, specifically faculty, fall short of their basic responsibilities. And they fail to honor the commitments that are articulated in the Cura statement. It's very disappointing. Some of the stories I've heard are rather surprising to the extent which simple human decency has been forgotten, or cases where a once supportive work environment, you see, have been polluted with cruel words or other toxic behavior. Well, you know, there are stories though that end in tears. There's stories and situations that are so contentious and unwelcoming that people want to leave. Shame on us. Shame on us. You see, intimidating and bullying over those to whom we hold some degree of power, demeaning colleagues to their face or behind their backs, throwing fits of anger, these outrageous forms of behavior are completely unacceptable and they shall stop. So we must instead model the behavior we want our students to emulate. And that values that are the foundation of this Catholic Jesuit university. To do anything less is not acceptable. There are many faculty and staff, hundreds, thousands actually, who make this workplace shine brightly with optimism, respect, and inclusion. Let's celebrate them, look for them, consider nominating them for recognition under the SLU Sparks program that Mickey just described. It's one way that we faculty members can support this program. But really, our best support for the program is a renewal of our commitment to fostering a workplace environment in which all are respected, all are encouraged, all are supported, and all are proud to be members of SLU. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'll apologize in advance. I'm getting over a cold, so my voice isn't quite right today. My name is Sue Stevens, and I'm here representing the Staff Advisory Committee. I am past chair and current chair-elect. As you just heard, Cura kind of lies in the genesis of the staff survey that we did several years ago, so I'm very excited about this program. It proves that our voices can be heard. If you ask people why they work at St. Louis University, it's because of our mission. We believe in the mission of St. Louis University to educate future leaders, to develop new technologies and perform life-saving research, to provide excellent medical care to our patients and serve our communities. We hold ourselves to high standards to be of service to each other, but somewhere along the way, we've forgotten to hold ourselves to the same standards with each other. When we're dealing with our own SLU community. We've grown tolerant of uncivil behavior. The university has weathered some tough times, and we know that tough times are ahead. We're asked to work more efficiently and harder and do more with less. It can be stressful, but we need to remember to treat each other with respect. St. Louis University has chosen not to accept incivility as the norm. The university has mandated that each of its members, faculty, staff, and students, be treated with kindness, respect, and dignity. Staff and faculty who are treated civilly and respectfully in their professional environment are more willing to work with a spirit of cooperation and teamwork. They feel valued by their peers and colleagues and have a sense of pride in their work, goals of their units, and the overall mission of St. Louis University. One way to help our fellow colleagues feel appreciated is through the new SLU Sparks program. Often in a hurry and stress of our daily lives, we forget to take time to recognize those who contribute to our success. There are people who lighten our moments with a well-timed word of encouragement or thoughtful gesture. people who will take the time away from their own busy schedule to help. Those people need to be recognized for their actions. We now have a program, Slew Sparks, which will only take a few minutes of our time to complete, but will give those people the recognition they deserve. Please remember the next time someone makes you feel better by a word or deed, or you see someone doing this for another, take a few moments and write a quick note. Give them a Slew Spark on the online form. Your consideration will help brighten someone else's day. St. Louis University has begun a new era under the leadership of Dr. Costello. Help him move the university forward to improve our national rankings and status within the community. We can accomplish this by embracing Cura. We should not let our voices be silent. We have proven that our voices do make a difference and will be heard. Thank you, Dr. Costello, Mr. Luna, and everyone involved in the Cura program. We're very grateful, and to address the respectful working relationships that we will once again help us succeed at being one of the best places to work in St. Louis. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric and Sue. So at this point, we would now like to open this up for questions or comments any of you might have. I'd be happy to invite Sue and Father Collins, Dr. Costello, and Eric to join me if they can field any questions or comments any of you might have as well. If you have a question or comment, please come to one of the microphones. We'd ask you to limit your comments to just a couple minutes, and so others may have an opportunity to say something they would like. If you're participating via Fuse, you can chat your question to the moderator, and we're tracking questions that way as well. So, thank you. Yeah. Sure, go ahead. Can just so everybody can hear your question. Let me. Oh, Eric's got one for you.
Hi. I guess this is an obvious question, and it's not a pleasant question, but I think it's probably going to be near the top of most people's minds when this comes up. I mean, one of the best ways to promote perceptions of dignity and respect would be by addressing the staff salary situation, which is really terrible. I mean, when I think about, I'm a department chair, and what my administrative secretary makes, and all the things that she's supposed to do. If you look at that job description on the HR website, it's unrealistic. I mean, as a faculty member, I would actually defer a raise if it meant that the staff could get a meaningful raise. So I think that's just a long-term problem, which I know you're aware of, but.
Thanks for your comment. We recognize here at the university and are constantly striving to monitor and deal with and improve compensation for all of our faculty and staff. And I think we're all aware that we're in challenging times in our industry and higher education right now. And so we're dealing with those issues, but that's something that is recognized and acknowledged as important to our people. And I know it is to the administration, to the board, to our president. So your comments are appreciated and not lost on those up here and those who are responsible for dealing with those issues.
It's like Phil Donahue, for those of you that get the reference.
Eric looks a little like Phil Donahue.
Thank you. Hi, Deborah Seal. A question that I had, I noticed that you mentioned that issues would be tracked to resolution. And while that's admirable, I also wonder about the need for confidentiality, especially in cases where retaliation is a fear and that somebody might not want to come forward for action, but conversation, at least initially, and have that be honored as confidential. So what's your thought on that?
Sure. So in those situations where someone is really looking to have a conversation and seek assistance on how to work through that issue, that's not something that we would intend to share and make sure, sort of publicize who that person's request. Really, when I talk about tracking requests for assistance to conclusion, we're more talking about situations where there's conflict that has to be addressed, and ensuring that I think there have been occasions at times where an issue arises and nobody really knows if it was ever dealt with or not. And so we want to make sure that people understand that if an issue arises to the level where, whether it be an investigation or you need to get parties together to try to sort it out, that we're going to make sure that there is some documented resolution to it so that there is some level of accountability to everyone involved. The situation may not be resolved in the way that one person wants or the other person wants, but we're at least going to make sure somewhere on paper that we have addressed where we ended with that situation so that there's clarity and transparency in that issue or with respect to that resolution going forward. So there's some credibility to that when somebody seeks assistance and we deal with it, that it just doesn't disappear. If that answers your question.
This is a question from Fuse. What type of in-services will be provided?
So I'm going to turn it over to Patrick Maloney to answer that question. He's going to be leading. Patrick's our manager of our learning and development team, who has been instrumental in putting this program together and working across campus with other individuals to help create the program. Patrick?
Thank you, Mickey. So this is sort of the model for what the in-services might look like, but we're trying to remain as flexible as possible. We know that, especially on the SLU care side with faculty, physicians, and clinics, that people can have much shorter amounts of time that they might be able to devote to learning about a program like this. So we've designed out in-services that go anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes. And if you reach out to the Cura team, the people who are responding to the request for assistance, then we will work with you to sort of design something that fits your needs. But it'll be anything from a brief overview of the major elements of the program to actually exploring SLU Sparks and how you would get in and make one of those nominations, getting into Skillsoft and seeing what online resources are available and actually sort of demoing the website for your group. So it can be any group. It can be division level, it can be department level, it can be committees. If you guys are interested in learning more, I encourage you just to reach out to us and we'll see what we can put together for you and your group.
Thank you, Patrick.
Hi, I am Natalie Flay. I'm an academic advisor here on campus, and I'm in a unique position to often hear student perspective on at times when they feel maybe disrespected in a classroom setting or elsewhere on campus. I'm just curious if student feedback has been gotten at all, like interaction with SGA, or if this is really meant to just be employee to employee discussion. Sometimes it is the student feedback that alerts us to a situation. I'm just curious if there's been discussion about that or what that looks like.
So this is really focused on faculty and staff, so employees of the university or faculty for that matter too. So it hasn't really focused on how that goes down into the student population. Really the history and the genesis of this program was really focused on working relationships in that regard.
I don't mean to sound terribly cynical, but it seems like a lot of the people who would need this program may not be in the room at the time. Is there any way that you plan to engage perhaps heads of schools or heads of departments and make them not mandatory, but participation or training in the program so that it's implemented top down?
So thanks everybody for being here. I'm feeling most of the questions and I'm happy to do that. No, great question. So the in-services Patrick talked about are available upon request, but really you'll start seeing discussions on this in the HR newsletter and the various publications that go out. And we will be actively working with leaders across campus to have the opportunity to come in and talk with their groups on the program. And really, I'd say the in-service on what the program is, but also how to take advantage of the resources that we're offering, because at the end of the day, the goal is to elevate our workplace culture. And so offering programs that help people do that, team building, how to have those difficult conversations, conflict management. Those are all things that will help us achieve the purpose. And some of those programs have already been developed or are in development, but we will adapt that to what people request. But we're also going to be seeking the assistance of other leaders across campus, allowing us to come out and spend some time with people talking about those things.
I could jump in there. So
Yes, please do.
Talking.
Thank you.
I think also I've been very grateful since I started. Is that okay? There it is. With Patrick and Mickey, at their invitation to have mission and identity assist in where it's possible to kind of complement in different sorts of programming on campus. So we did a session on forgiveness a little while back last spring. We'll do some kind of Advent and Lenten reflections, new material for NewsLink that kind of highlights different aspects of living this mission out and being merciful in the mission. If you've noticed in NewsLink in the corner there, we kind of changed that to mercy, mission and mercy in the light of the year of mercy of Pope Francis and so on. So I think we're also thinking about there are the HR programs, there's Cura itself, but we're looking at in a whole variety of ways, trying to just shape the culture differently and set a different sort of a narrative within the whole culture. I mean, particular programs are necessary, obviously, in that regard, but to look at, and that's where I think it's everybody's role to think about how might we do some things differently within our own department? How do we interact with each other? So it's kind of at the same time, it's not all riding on Cura either. It's an effort to let's think about ways that we can shape dynamics in a different way, closer to home too. So that's also a little plug for mission identity programs. Ignatian lunch tomorrow. Okay, thanks.
To that point, we've discussed this effort at the President's Cabinet, the President's Coordinating Committee. So the vice presidents, the leaders of the institution buy into this. We'll be discussing at the President's Advisory Council. Clearly, those who are in leadership roles have to be supportive of this and working with their respective divisions to try to make sure that this becomes a reality throughout the organization, identifying those areas or perhaps individuals where there's a particular challenge and working to resolve those issues. So we will continue to emphasize this at the administrative level at the organization. It's important, though, that we all support the effort. Thank you.
I'm DC Cooper. I would like to firstly commend the administration for development of the Cura program. I have some experience with regard to a similar program. About a quarter of a century ago, I worked at a major corporation. They actually had a diversity task force. And you mentioned that the genesis for this particular effort was based on feedback from a number of different areas. In the case of the diversity task force, the creation of the diversity task force was actually formed as a result of exit information that was shared from exit interviews. So I have a two-part question. And I'd also like to say that the corporation, you mentioned about the climate survey, the particular corporation that I worked at conducted a cultural audit survey where they assessed and again, there was I was on the committee, reviewed a lot of very revealing information that was shared from many of the employees that they shared during their exit interview. So I have a two-part question. Did you get any feedback from the cultural audit, from exit interviews? And part two, you mentioned about the climate survey. Are there plans to conduct subsequent surveys in order to evaluate the effectiveness of the program?
Sure, I have it on. Okay, good. Yes. So thank you for the question. So I'll start with the second, or the first question first, which is exit survey data. So we do conduct exit surveys. Sometimes we get good feedback from that, and when we do, we follow up on that to address those issues. We don't necessarily have a tool, nor have we been able to take the information we received and kind of create more statistical analysis or broader analysis of how it's more anecdotal, I guess I'd say, to this point. So that's something we can look into. further. With respect to the climate assessment survey, we are on schedule to have another climate assessment survey this year, so in the spring, and the preparation of that survey is underway. And in fact, I can sort of in line with the questions that you were asking, this year the survey has been working with other organizations, including the President's diversity group, to add questions to the survey to deal with diversity and inclusion issues, as well as some of the issues that were being dealt with from a faculty standpoint on gender equity. So those are issues that are also being addressed in the climate assessment survey that should be taking place, I think, in April is probably when that survey will be issued. And our commitment has been every 2 years that we'll conduct that type of a survey.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Defoe. I'm chair of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences. So thank you very much for this program and for having all of us here together. I was just wondering, I think President Costello alluded briefly that not all of us are on board with the mission. I think Father Chris Collins says all of us are guilty of that sometimes. Maybe if I listen to what Eric said, he was more sanguine about faculty being toxic and having a problem. So my question is, if people fall far short of number one, the standards, and support, recognition, all these things don't work, does the program have a bit more teeth to it?
So the answer to that question is, we have in place on campus processes and procedures for holding people accountable for failing to live up to the standards that we have. And what I would say is the program really is focused more and first and foremost on elevating our dialogue and our work environment here. So as you know, a lot of institutions or organizations, you'll hear about civility or bullying policies, but really as a Catholic Jesuit university, as we started getting into developing the program, the conclusion was we could really be so much more than that. And so a lot of the focus on this program is really not so much on how do we deal with the lowest common denominator, but how do we elevate all of us to sort of create a culture that befits our mission and what we profess to be. So that's really a big focus of the program. The other thing that you'll see is that we talk about is sort of as a Catholic Jesuit university, more than just sort of if somebody's doing something wrong, but really as Father Collins talked about, kind of the full dimension of these issues. So you'll hear talked about as we through the educational resources and other programs, not just how do we deal with the issues, but also how do we demonstrate patience and forgiveness and mercy at times, both how do we ask for it and how do we give it when that's appropriate. All of that being said, we believe in accountability. I think accountability is necessary to ensure that people live up to those standards, or at least addressing it when people aren't living up to those standards. So we have processes and procedures in place already to deal with those issues, and we will continue to do that. The steering committee was really developed in part to ensure that if we are having issues in a particular area on campus, that group of faculty, staff, and administrators can work together to help address those issues and make sure that there's accountability occurring. And then I would just say the fact that we have this program, the fact that the PCC approved this program, the fact that Dr. Costello is here, and you heard the comments he made, and all of our administrators are here, there's very much a commitment to accountability on making sure that people align themselves with the standards that we've outlined. So I don't know if anybody wants to add anything to that.
I can add one point for faculty members that the faculty manual has a very clear provision regarding a professional relations committee and a process by which unprofessional behavior is handled through hearings among your peers. And so that is a instituted policy and a mechanism that exists, and faculty are encouraged to use that vehicle that's available for them.
So let me, before the question, we're kind of out of time, so we have time for one more question, and we have somebody who's waiting to ask it, so please go ahead.
Great, well thank you. My name is Ben Smith and I work in the business school. I have a cold as well, so I apologize if I don't sound very well. So I'm very aware that within a community there are multiple communities and multiple realms of communities. And so my question is more of, for those who are subcontracted our custodial services, our food service individuals. How does this involve them, and how can they be brought into the fold, or are they brought into the fold?
Well, so the employees or the program is really applies to people who work at St. Louis University. We haven't really thought about how it would apply to subcontractors, for example, but I would say that the standards are the standards, and they apply whether you're dealing with a colleague who works next door to you or someone who's on campus visiting. And failing to live up to those standards should be treated the same way, whether it's any person who just happens to be walking on campus, a student, a visitor, or a colleague. So we're all held and call each other to kind of rise to sort of that standard. Whether or not it's appropriate to share this program with people who don't work for the university, that part we'll have to look at. I think that's something we can give some consideration to. Thanks for that question. Thank you for all the thoughtful questions and comments. Would you like to add anything?
I think all the questions were very good and touched on important elements moving forward. Again, I want to thank everyone who came out today. I know some people couldn't, and perhaps some people, as was pointed out, who maybe most need to be here, didn't take advantage of this opportunity, but we will reach them. Clearly, structures are important and the administration's important, but this will never work unless also peer-to-peer we're working to hold people accountable, giving people opportunities to rise to their better selves. So thank you for taking the time. This is the launch. I'm very optimistic about what the future holds. Thank you.
That concludes the program. Thank you again for coming. And if you have any questions, we'll be here to answer those questions.